Hello everyone and welcome back to Ozzy's Young Learning Emporium. In today's video, we're going to be looking at this very important part of geometry, which is finding the gradient of a line graph or a linear graph. So basically, what this means is that we can basically find out the rate of change of the y value compared to the x value. So basically, if I read out the definition of a gradient, so in maths, the gradient is the rate of change, which is how much the y value changes when the x value increases by 1, or you can just say changes. So we're just looking at how much the y value changes when the x value changes by a bit. Okay, so we have got a nice little formula over here. Alright, so the gradient, which we denote as m in any equation, we would normally say that our gradient is equal to m. So that's just something you can keep in your mind, something which is not too important for now, but I'll just try to get rid of this somehow. There we go. I'll fix that. Okay, so the formula is that we measure the change in y and divide that over the change in x. So it's fairly simple, honestly. So we take two y values, so y2 and y1. We find their difference, and then we take two x values and we find their difference. Now we just divide them. So now we have y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So I'll just give you a nice look of that. There we go. So let's look at an example. So let's imagine this is our example, and by the way, we're on a Cartesian plane, as you can see over here. So we've been given a graph, we've been given the plane as well, so it's easy to find the coordinates. So to start with, the first step we need to do is to find two coordinates on this graph. So we can see that if we look at one on the x-axis and one on the y-axis where they meet, there is a point on the graph. So that's why I'm going to take this point over here as my first coordinate. So it's going to be 1, 1. Because remember, coordinates are written in the form of x and y like that. So that's why I've got 1 and then another 1. Alright? So now the next thing we're going to look at is to find a second coordinate. So over here, let's just move this way and on the x-axis, and now we find 2. If we go up, we have a thing over here, and this basically levels out with 2. Let's just imagine it meets that 2. That's what I intended to do. So our coordinate then becomes this point right here. So this is, if we write x first and then y, remember, like that, then we'll have 2 on the x-axis and 2 on the y-axis. So 2, 2. Now, let me just go back. 2 and 2. Okay, so now what is our y1? What is our y2? What is our x1? What is our x2? So if we choose one coordinate, this is going to make either x1 and y1, or it's going to make x2 and y2. So this one, it can either have, so this one and this one can either be x1 and y1, or they can be x2 and y2. They can't be x1 and y2, they can't be y1 and x2. That's just not gonna work. So we can decide, because this is the first coordinate we came up with, let's just say that this is our x1 and y1. So we've got 1 as our x1, and then the y value in this coordinate is also 1, so we're gonna have 1 as our y1. So now let's look at the second coordinate. Now there's obviously going to be our x2 and y2, since we've already done x1 and y1. So now again, both of them are going to be 2. So x2 is 2 because of this one over here, and y2 is 2 because of this one over here. So now if we apply this formula that we have y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So let's find the difference between the y. So we've got y2, which is 2, and y1, which is 1, divided by x2, which is 2, and x1, which is also 1. So this becomes 1 over 1, which is equal to 1. So this is why we would say that the m over here is equal to 1. Or we can say the gradient, oh my god, that's a very bad spelling of gradient. 1 second, let me just fix that, there we go. So the gradient is equal to 1. Let's look at a second example. So the two coordinates that we can choose over here is, if we look at 1, I just like to go with x is equal to 1 because it's just easy to start from there. And we go up, 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 up. We find that there's a point over here which means that y is equal to 2. So that's our first coordinate, 1, 2. Remember again, x first, then y second, like that. Alright, so now let's look at our second coordinate. Let's move in this direction, and find this 2. Let's trace all the way up. There we go, that's a point right there. And if we go across, we've got 4 over here. So that's why it's going to be 2. And then our y value is 4. And that's our coordinates. Beautiful. Now we're going to decide which one is going to be x1 and y1. So let's just say this is the first one. So let's say this is x1 and y1. And this is our second one. So this can be x2 and y2. So that's why our x1 becomes 1, our y1 becomes 2, our x2 becomes 2, and our y2 becomes 4. Beautiful. Now what are we going to do? We're going to look at our formula, and we need to just find the difference in the y and find the difference in the x, and that's all. So let's look at the y's first. So y2 is equal to 4, y1 is equal to 2, and x2 is equal to 2, and x1 is equal to 1. So this is equal to 2 divided by 1, which is equal to 2. So basically, for this graph, our gradient is 2, or we can say m is equal to 2 for this graph. So this is how we can use this formula for the gradient to find the gradient of linear graphs. If you have any questions, comment them down below. Other than that, that's it for this video. It's quite straightforward. It's just really handy to make something like this on the side so that you don't get confused what is y1 and y2. So you might want to do that. That's a really handy thing to do. And we want to always refer back to this formula. If you are using it in an exam, maybe it's good if you just write it down on the paper as soon as the exam starts so that you don't forget about it. It's really handy to have like a written notation of the formula, as you saw me referring to it back and forth when working with these. Alright, so that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!